you were in prison. I think you said that you were like addicted to heroin or something at the time. And being from Utah, I think there is a little bit of that out there, right? So I guess can you tell me a little bit about your upbringing? And you said you also fought your whole life. So it's, I mean, I'm interested to hear about all of it pretty much.
Yeah, so, I mean, just from the beginning, I grew up in Utah, and I grew up, I wrestled pretty young. I was from my uncles and my grandpa and stuff were into wrestling, so they made me wrestle when I was real little. But I was always just kind of a knucklehead. Growing up, I never really wanted to focus on anything that wasn't what I exactly wanted to do at the moment. And as I got a little older, found myself in trouble. Found myself kind of set apart, kind of being bad kid and whatever else. And by the time I was 13, 14, it was drug, it was crime. It was starting to go that way. But I was still, in and out of wrestling rooms that whole time. I was
Mm,
still, 14 when I actually started, getting high and kind of partying. At that point was the same time that I figured out what the UFC was, and
mm.
was the same age I was the first time I went into a fight gym and like spot grappled and learned some of this stuff. Rented a UFC DVD from Blockbuster type of thing, and went from there. And from then on, and from that moment on, I knew I wanted to fight. It was just the things I was doing weren't really conducive with that. So it was kind of a push and pull. As the years went on, I wrestled in high school, but at the same time was doing a lot of drugs and really that was kind of like the only reason I was in school is because I was on probation, and my probation officer would make sure I was at school. So if I was at school, I might as well do what I wanted to do, and wrestling was part of that. That's what all my buddies did too. So uh, wrestling and training and going back and forth and partying, and that progressed to real drugs. By the time I was 17, I was doing heroin, I was doing cocaine. There's a lot of drugs in Utah for those who don't know.
Yeah, that's
uh,
why I mentioned that.
yeah, there's a lot of drugs out there, and drugs breed crime and bad situations. So that's just kind of where I found myself, was addicted to heroin at 17. By the time I was 18, I was super addicted, and pretty shortly after that, I was shooting up, dude. I was a full blown junkie, man. By the time I was out of high school, I didn't even finish high school because I was so strung out, and
Mm,
kind of forgot about the MMA dream at that point, to be honest with you. But uh, at 20, to kind of sum it up, the legal battles had come to a head, and well, not legal battles, my bad decisions, legally had come to a head, and I got arrested for robbing a drug dealer, and they didn't care it was a drug dealer. It was still a robbery, and I went to prison for 3.5 years for it when I was 20.
wow.
And that was like, most terrible moment of my life, I guess, and some of the most terrible moments of my life. But at the same time, it's what turned me into who I am in a way. At that point, I was still just a little boy. I was still just a scared kid that was a lot of crazy shit, and was pretty tough for what he was. But going to the place that I had to go to as young as I was, and learning how to become a man in that environment is really what has built me into what I am today. So yeah, man, that's why I got started late. I got out of prison at 23, had my first, hit literally that day, went to the best fight gym within a 30-mile radius of me, and I haven't
Same
stopped.
day.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't think I missed a day of training on purpose. A single day since. You
Damn.
know, that undefeated amateur, undefeated professional. You know, as a pro, I've got 6 finishes across 7 wins, man. And honestly, dude, the only guys that don't have crazy records, uh, either have gone on to have better records or were the only dudes that would say yes.
Mm.
That was that my manager at the time. It was like the hardest thing ever to find me fights, and it was like mind-boggling to me. It was like these guys are pro fighters and they don't want to fight. Like what the fuck, care who it is. And but now we're to the point where I think we're headed in the right direction. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you've been out, what, did you serve the full sentence of 3.5 years? So you were been out since you were 23 and a half, pretty much?
Yeah. So they sentenced me to more. They sentenced me to like, I think it sentenced me to like 4.5 or something. And the way Utah works is like it's indeterminate sentencing. So they sentence you to like a 1 to 15 year term,
Hmm.
and then crime, and depending on this and that, you got to go in front of another like group of judges essentially while you're in prison. And those dudes are the ones who decide whether you're going to do 1 year or 15 years, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. Doesn't
Damn.
matter. And a lot of crimes fall. All these felonies fall into either 0 to 5, 1 to 15, or 5 to life, unless it's
Hmm.
like hardcore shit like that. It's like 25-year minimums and things like that. But yeah, dude, like that was what happened with me. Was I went there and they looked at this, they looked at that, and they said, okay, they sentenced me to a total of like 4.5 or something like that. But because I, kept my nose out of shit, and they didn't catch me doing anything stupid while I was in there, they released me with a little bit of good time. So that's why I did 3.5 years.